They are awesome-looking machines of war. And in combat, the U.S. Army's Apache helicopters are truly fearsome weapons. Tonight, during a training exercise here in Albania, one of them crashed. A NIGHTLINE crew was on the scene when the accident occurred.
We watched it crash just over the hill here. Everyone, as we have said, is out safely.
And we'll have an exclusive report as we begin our series from the region.
Foxtrot 6-1, this is Charlie 4-7. Texaco is clear with 5.
Roger.
Tonight, at the Brink, the constant danger.
From ABC News, this is Nightline. Reporting from Tirana, Albania, Ted Copple.
The U.S. Army's Apache helicopter has taken on near mythical proportions. No single weapon system could possibly meet the expectations that have been whipped up these last few weeks, mainly by us in the media. The arrival of the Apaches here in Albania has been eagerly anticipated and repeatedly delayed by congested air corridors filled with relief flights, by bad weather, by the need to bring in additional weapons that operate in conjunction with the Apaches, by the need also for ground troops to protect the helicopters wherever they are based. Then, too, the Apaches provide NATO forces in the region with fresh military options. These helicopters will bring the war much closer to Serbian troops in Kosovo. They have the firepower to destroy armored personnel carriers or tanks, the agility and the armor that permits them to fly low in pursuit of troops on the ground. Tonight, during a training exercise about 50 kilometers from here, one of the Apaches crashed. Forrest Sawyer and a NIGHTLINE crew have been covering the exercise and were there.
Ironically, it began as a training mission to rescue a downed pilot.
Today we're going to simulate a real-world injury, and we're going to insert both security and medevac assets to bring them out of the downed aviator point.
Apache gunships would fly lead. Behind them, Black Hawk support teams. We traveled with a squad trained to provide ground protection until a medevac could arrive. It went like clockwork, the security force fanning out.
Our guys are sitting up here.
One soldier playing the role of injured pilot.
How bad are you hurt? Pretty bad.
Our camera picks up an Apache flying escort. Its tail dips down. Cameraman Fletcher Johnson pans away, then back to catch the Apache as it drops behind a small hill. A few seconds later, it explodes. Now the team must try to rescue pilots for real. As the helicopter burns and the smell of gas fills the air, the soldiers risk their lives to pull them to safety.
We got it, guys. We got the guys. Let's go. Take your time. So let me go down front here, okay? Everybody off this hill. Let's go. Off the hill, sir.
The pilots are taken down the hill.
Okay. We're going to call a medevac in for you guys. Get you out of here. We'll secure the rest of the aircraft.
But it is not over.
A lot of fuel in the fuel tank.
Okay.
A lot.
Okay, gentlemen.
We had all the missiles, 4 missiles. You had 2 rocket pods filled with 19 rockets each. A lot of ammunition up there, 30 millimeters.
Hey! The crash happened about 15 minutes ago. Everyone, as we have said, is out safely. We've got 2 men we still have to evacuate. Sir, do you have any bleeding?
His finger.
Go to the medevac frequency 9 and drop it off to secure.
Stay with it.
The medevac is rushing toward them, but time is moving very slowly. No one knows the extent of the pilot's injuries. For security reasons, the Army has asked us not to identify either man.
Watch your eyes. Huh? Close your eyes. Medevac in! Got a little flex room in the face, otherwise you're all right.
For one of the pilots, shock is beginning to set in. Some of the soldiers hover over the 2 men. Others keep watch. All of them wait. It is nearby now, and the soldiers move the pilots to lower ground. And at last, the medevac arrives. In minutes, both pilots will be looked after in an Army MASH unit. Remarkably, they have suffered only minor injuries. The Apache was destroyed, and an investigation is underway to determine what went wrong. For Nightline, this is Forrest Sawyer, outside Tirana, Albania.
From a U.S. Army training accident tonight here in Albania to the desperate search for a revered Kosovar Albanian community leader. That story when we come back.
This is ABC News Nightline. Brought to
United States, this is a new and unfamiliar theater of combat. To the Serbs and Kosovar Albanians, it is an ancient one. Several years ago, when most of the world was paying little or no attention to that struggle, the BBC focused on one particular village in Kosovo and on an extraordinary Kosovar Albanian who lived there. Our own producer, Jill Parker, wondered what had become of him, and Nightline correspondent Dave Marish reports on what she found.
The search for Mohammed Shala began at a refugee camp called Rashbol. It's a small camp and an easy place to find someone. For example, Mohammed's cousin. Had he been there as advertised, that is. Instead, there was Selman Baitucci, who had worked with Mohammed in their old hometown of Suvareka. I've known him for the last 10 years, Baitucci said. He was a very good economist and a friend. Mohammed Shala's good work couldn't save his job at Suvareka's massive Balkan rubber plant. When Slobodan Milosevic's Serb nationalists began throwing Kosovar Albanians out of their jobs, they started with executives like Mohammed, so he became a simple farmer. But Shala had a second strike against him. He was political, a local leader of the Democratic League for Kosovo, the kind of man whose conversations with his friends often turned to the beatings that Serb police had given them. By 1993, when he appeared in this BBC documentary, Mohammed Shala had become a target. The Serbs have always wanted to kill people who stood out, who thought about developing the economy and advancing Kosovo's cause, said Mehmet El-Shani, or at least to drive them from the political and economic scene. But that was then, in Kosovo. Did either man know where in Albania Mohammed Shala was now? No. They did know one thing. Mohammed's cousin, Emir Shala, had recently been relocated to the industrial town of Elbasan, a 3-hour drive over the mountains. With 7,000 relocated Kosovars in Elbasan, the local TV station is used to helping out. They put out a message for Mohammed's cousin Emir and sent us on to the mayor's office and their register of refugees.
Okay.
Shala's, the municipal refugee list, had 100 of them. None of them Emir Shala from Suvareka. But hold on, there was a Mohammed Shala in town. But it wasn't our Mohammed Shala. In fact, it wasn't even a Shala from Suvareka. Not everyone registers, the clerk said, trying to be encouraging. His subtext, keep on looking, don't give up. Try Rushit Salami. For the past 3 weeks, the man in charge of Elbasan's refugee population. Elbasan may have no money to repair its roads, but it is trying hard to provide some comfort and shelter for its new neighbors. Are you from Suvareka, Salami asks over and over. As room after room answers no, this former hotel manager from Kosovo's capital, Pristina, gets more and more upset. I'm not helping because I'm a refugee, he says. I hate when people call us that. We've been expelled. I'm just trying to make a contribution, no matter how small it may be. But if Elbasan camp proved a disappointment, the streets of the city turned up gold in the persons of the Kuchi family, 26 strong, just out of Suvareka, living in the home of a brother, a retired electrician. Skender Kuchi had met up with his old friend Mohammed Shala and his family, trekking to exile in Albania, just a mile or so north of the border.
I
spoke to his brother for about 2 minutes. How are you? How was the journey? And so on. After he left Suvareka, Mohammed and his family had tried to return home, but they weren't allowed back. They were told, either you go somewhere else, or we will kill you.
They were exhausted, tired, in really bad shape. Some of the family had to be carried because their feet couldn't move anymore. I don't know whether they made it or not.
That morning, the Kuchis had also bumped into Mohammed's cousin right there in Elbasan. But by the afternoon, their best efforts to track him down again had not succeeded in the slightest. There was another road to try, the one that led to the Adriatic coast, an area that in better times is a beach resort. But this spring hosts yet another refugee camp called Mali Robit. In the camp register, there was no shortage of Shalas, but none of them was called Mohammed. An Italian volunteer working at the camp offered to take us to one Shala family. And they did have a relative named Mohammed, but when they brought out his picture, we knew he was not the man.
You may know him.
A neighbor in the camp, a former school headmaster, was consulted, but no luck there. Moments later, though, an old man appeared, Yatish Shamali, Mohammed's father-in-law. I saw him in Kukas more than a week ago, before I came here, he told us. And another friend in the camp added, he is alive. Shamali walked slowly across the camp to his tent to introduce his wife, Hava, Mohammed's mother-in-law. The elderly woman had been shattered by the family flight to Albania. Especially hurtful was a robbery at gunpoint perpetrated by Serb former neighbors.
They put a gun against my son like this, and when he took out his money, they smashed the window of the car and hurt him.
Hava Shamali said she would rather have died in her own home than seen her family scattered across the Balkans. But at least she was sure that her daughter and son-in-law were still alive in the Kukas camp near the Kosovo border.
They wanted to come down here, but they couldn't. They had nothing, no clothes. They even gave the one bag they had with them to us to take across the border because they couldn't walk. Their feet were so swollen.
It's easy to find Mohammed, the Shamalis assured. Just go to Kukas, over the mountains to the mosque. He's got lots of family there. You'll see. Kukas, historically the gateway town to Albania's northeast frontier. Actually, the historic town of Kukas was flooded long ago by the artificial lake that now covers it. Modern Kukas, with its shabby communist-era concrete block buildings, is covered today with a new flood of refugees from Kosovo. Part of that flood is Mohammed Shala from Suvareka. The search for him followed instructions. Start at the mosque. He has an apartment nearby. Quickly and easily, a Mohammed Shala and his family turns up. But again, it's a different Mohammed Shala. Two more neighbors say they know nothing. But then a woman says, yes, I do know him, and I know where he's staying. This woman had gone to school with Mohammed's daughter and had traveled with the Shalas from Suvareka to Kukas. This is where Mohammed and his family have settled down. 3 adults and 6 children in one clean, safe room. The Serbs killed all the intellectuals they could find in Suvoreka, she says. Whole families were slaughtered. Those who had accommodated the OSCE monitors were burned to death in their homes. Mohammed had been warned that his family was on the Serbs to kill list. But Mohammed survived, and so did his brother Jamal.
When the offensive started, we left the house and went to another part of town to get past the police.
I kept worrying what will happen to my children, my husband. I thought the Serbs might come and take them away and kill them. Maybe they would rape my daughters. I kept waiting for the knock on the door, the Serbs breaking into our home.
We were asleep when it started, but paramilitaries poured out of the police station and started shooting, burning, killing. We ran into our yard and saw tanks and police just up the road. When we crossed an open space, they shot at us. One of our cousins, a girl about 20, was killed.